Recording, it's recording. Okay, what's today? This is the 27th. We're going to have a blood moon tonight. Boy, all sorts of things going on. But not too much about this Iran nuclear deal in the news lately. It's kind of faded away. And unless I missed something, I didn't see any signatures on Yom Kippur, either possible date. So we got some more comments and thoughts about that.
Also, I'm seeing a lot of posting on Facebook about this. I was raised in the Catholic Church. I understand popes, but I've never seen a pope say the things that this man has said. He is way over the top.
He's way
over. He has really gone out.
Well, you can see that he's adopted some of the agenda of the left wing, Global warming is going to kill us, and capitalism is bad, and he's different.
He is a different pope.
He speaks.
Is he demon possessed yet?
I don't know. Is the false prophet already under that? He must be under the spell of Satan, because there's no way this man can say the things that he's saying without a demonic oppression over him.
Well, I guess we will find out, because we're going to be here for a while. Yes?
He speaks very lightly regarding abortion. Did you hear that speech he had?
No, I didn't.
Oh yes, it was disgusting.
Really?
Like everything goes.
Yeah.
Well, you can see what the agenda is, and the agenda is one world government, and he has to coalesce all religions under himself. And you can see where this is all headed. And of course, we could probably review Revelation 17 and figure out exactly what's going to happen there. We are living in some of the most interesting time for the last 2,000 years. And trying to get it all straight is difficult, to say the least, but I'm confident that we have got the Antichrist and his agenda located. And now the only question is, when are they going to sign that agreement? I got some thoughts on that today. And before we get started, let's open class with a word of prayer. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, our creator and maker, and the one in whom we live and move and have our being. We're thankful that you've allowed us to live in this, the most interesting of times, when we see your prophetic words literally being fulfilled right before our eyes. And Lord, of course, we are still here awaiting that last trumpet. And we just hope that you will continue to guide us and give us some insight into this event, and so that we can share it with our friends, and that we can all be ready when we hear that last trumpet sound. And we ask all this in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus. Amen. Okay, I didn't get through last week, and Steve said he only had 5 minutes. Well, he may have only had 5 minutes, but his mouth was running so fast that I missed a lot of it, and I wanted to go back over and at least touch on some of these Antichrist scriptures, because they're really interesting, and it gives us some insight as to what we can be looking for here pretty quick. Because if we've got the Antichrist and his covenant defined, then that pretty much puts a date stamp on the beginning of Daniel's 70th week. And if we know that beginning, we know that the last 3.5, as best I can tell, and I haven't found anything that would dispute it right now, that last 3.5 is the tribulation. In Matthew 24, Jesus calls it the Great Tribulation. That's the time of Jacob's trouble. Now, Steve and I and my son Daniel had breakfast on Friday, and we just went through all of this stuff, and we all had to agree that we were all kind of depressed. Here we are expecting not to be here, and yet we are still here. And yet I do believe that the date still is knowable. The problem is our assumptions are faulty to some degree, and some of them are completely faulty. But the beauty of this time is that we get to test our assumptions against reality. No longer do we have to guess if there's going to be a tribulation or not, or if there's going to be an Antichrist or not. We got the evidence right here in front of us. And it's overwhelming in my view. It's all happening at exactly the right time in history. And so consequently, we should be able to determine some degree of accuracy what's going to be happening in the next year or two. And I'm afraid we're going to be here to see some of it. But it's going to be, like I say, we are seeing Bible prophecy fulfilled right here before our very eyes, right in the newspaper. And nobody else has a clue what's going on. So let us, my lightning speed computer will ever catch up with the keystroke. The rapture of the church is still yet future, because unless I miss something, church still here. But Daniel's 70th week is about to begin. The tribulation's not a 7-year period like everybody knew, but a careful study of the scriptures, and the most important prophet of all times, Jesus, says it's only 3.5 years. Guess we should have looked a little closer. Now, the abomination of desolation begins the tribulation.
I need
Yes.
to see that 3.5 years again. I'm not convinced.
Say again?
I'm not convinced it's 3.5 years.
Okay. You don't have to be.
I
What?
have to live with you.
No, you don't. But please do.
And one of the things we absolutely know for sure, and we went over this with many scriptures, the church just simply can't be here during the tribulation period by virtue of its definition. It's the wrath of God being poured out on the world. How can we be here? And that was one solution to the problem. Well, yeah, tribulation 7 years, but we're here. Maybe we're that group that's taken out. But we went through that possibility, and that is discounted because of the nature of the group that's taken out. That big group that's taken out at the front end of the tribulation period finds itself in heaven, I believe, through a rapture. But they were in great tribulation, and they came out. How can they be the church? It's just not possible. It's another group, but it's not the church. So we went through, Steve and I and my son Danny, went through all of the possibilities, and we just, we have to believe for sure that we have identified the Antichrist and his covenant. And if you have that as a hard line, a hard marker in time, that forces everything else to come to fruition within the next 7 years. And so with that in mind, we're going to be able to see some Bible prophecy fulfilled. And so I wanted to go over that with you some today, and just for your own thoughts. And, at this juncture, if you have a thought that, adds some light to what we're studying, please bring it up and let's look at it, because, nothing is out of bounds. Because right now, are we really raptured at Rosh Hashanah? Or is it maybe the Feast of Tabernacles or something else? And we went through that story, and unless the Lord's fooling us, it's Rosh Hashanah. It only makes sense. And I got some more evidence for you on that here today, too. Any questions about what we've been going through over this last week or two?
That when the seal judgments begin, that they're very mild, and we may see part of the seal judgments before, or we won't see any of them? Okay.
And the reason I say that is the nature of the writing in Revelation. When it talks about the sealed judgments, it's at the between the 6th and the 7th one, there is a phrase that the people on the earth are crying out, and they're saying, "The day of thy wrath has come, and who is able to stand?" That wording in the Greek is such that when it says, thy wrath has come, it's not talking about a future event. It can only be talking about a previous event or a current event. What does that mean? The wrath is there with the 7 seals. And it is not a small wrath by any stretch of the imagination. It is profound. But it is not as bad as what's coming with the trumpets.
My
And
thinking was, what if, and I don't remember the first seal judgment, I'd have to go back and look at Revelation.
that's the
Revelation.
4 horsemen of the apocalypse.
Okay, I'm thinking, I'm trying to tie it in with the collapse that we're supposed to be seeing this fall.
The collapse.
Financial collapse. That
Yeah,
is-
yeah, we were all looking for a collapse and it ain't collapsed yet.
Well, but this is only September,
Yeah.
so I'm just
Well-
trying to tie that into maybe a possibility that that could be a judgment against us.
Oh, it may be, but it's not one of the tribulation judgments. I think things are really getting bad here exponentially. We're seeing Christians now coming under fire for their beliefs. I would never dream that we would see that now when you have a woman standing up and refusing to sign a marriage license between 2 people of the same sex and have her, and she's thrown in jail. That's just a precursor of what's coming. Hopefully, we won't be here for the worst parts of it, but you can see the whole system, how it's beginning to coalesce around what I believe to be evil, one world government, and a government that controls everyone, down to and including your ability to buy and sell and where you worship and who you worship. And so this is, although it's scary, it's very interesting to those of us who study prophecy, because the events that are about to take place, they've been forecast in the scripture, and many people have looked at them and said, this is symbolic. And it's so symbolic that, well, you can't figure it out, so why study it? Because you can't ever know it. And to which I say, then what value is prophecy? If you can't understand it, what value is it? It's just something there to confuse you, right? Well, I believe you can understand it, and I believe that we're going to see it fulfilled as we move along here in time. Now, this is an interesting scripture. Boy, I would really like to do Isaiah again. And that's another question. What do y'all want to go through next? I can do any prophecy book that you have an interest in. Revelation, that's one that we can do. Or I can do some Isaiah. I can do some of the minor prophets. Does anybody have any preference? Or are you just going to leave it up to me?
Revelation sounds good.
Did I hear one for Revelation? Yep. Well, I'll guarantee you, if we do that,
Revelation.
I know you would be interested because you're doing it in GSF.
Well,
But-
Christine and I and several, I don't know who else in here, we're doing Revelation and BSF this year, so we can cheat and really get a double look at it.
Well, what I can do is we can do Revelation if you would like, but I'll guarantee you it won't be like any you have ever heard before. Because I don't buy into this business that it's just symbolic and you can't understand it anyway. I think you can understand everything in there. The only problem is the time wasn't right. And now I think the time is right, and insight is being poured out on those of us who study this stuff. And it's just amazing to me. And once again, how are we saved? We're saved by faith, faith in action, based on belief, sustained by confidence. And if you don't have any confidence in this Bible, where's your faith? The thing that underpins faith is confidence that God is not a man to lie, nor the son of man to repent. What he says he will do, what he speaks he will bring forth. And he has spoken in his word, and we are seeing it being brought forth right now, at this very hour. And to me, obviously, the absolute most amazing and hopeful prophecy that we have is that not everybody's going to die. And if we are going to be a participant in that event, I just want to know everything I can know about it. And I do not accept the premise that we just can't know anything. And for reasons of which hopefully you can remember. But this is an interesting passage here in Isaiah. It says, with stammering lips and another tongue will he speak to this people. We're talking about house of Israel here. And it says, because you have said, we have made a covenant with death, and with hell are we in agreement. When the overflowing scourge shall pass through, it shall not come upon us, unto us, for we have made lies our refuge, and under falsehood have we hid ourselves. I'm telling you, that speaks miles about what's going on right now. This covenant of death, I am pretty sure, is the covenant that we as a nation are about to make with the Antichrist. And an interesting part of it is this phrase, stammering lips. If you look up in Strong's, that word stammering is lig, L-A-E-G, I believe. And if you look at it from Hebrew, from left to right, it's L-A-E-G. If you were a Phoenician and looking at the word, it's G-A-L-E. If you put the two words together, it's legal, which was the ancient name of the Irish people. Isn't that curious? And so, at any rate, in carrying that logic onward, one might assume from this passage that maybe it's with the Irish descendants that this covenant of death has been made. And if that be the case, here we sit, Remember lesson number 17, we went over where Israel went and where is Israel in the end times. And the long and the short of it was, it looks like the tribe of Manasseh is that place to look for Israel in the end time. And the tribe of Manasseh had two sons, one named Eri and the other one Machir. And so anyway you see the Eri, the Irish, or the Macs of the world, present company included, you would probably find that country that speaks with stammering lips. So at any rate, they've made a covenant with death. And this covenant that we have with what's about to be signed with Iran, interestingly, I believe, is that covenant of death. Because we know full well, anybody who has a third of a brain, you don't even have to have a half, you know that the people we're making a covenant with never kept one in their lives and don't intend to, and they tell you right to your face, oh yeah, we're going to sign this covenant, we're going to make nuclear bombs, we're going to blow you up, we're going to destroy Israel. Yeah.
If you think about all these covenants, with Israel, with Europe, with us with Europe and all that, the Russians and all that, nuclear stuff, no one has ever kept their word. Not one. No one's ever kept that
Oh, no.
contract. Yeah. No one has. Ever.
Never, ever.
Crazy.
And there's some more stuff I want to, interesting. Of course, I find all this stuff interesting. I've got a weak mind, I can't help it. Sign of the times, Senator Barbara Mikulski of Maryland, the Democrat, was the 34th member of the Senate to pledge her support to the deal when it comes up for a vote in the U.S. Congress. Enough to assure Obama will prevail in his administration's effort to complete action on the landmark nuclear agreement. Your covenant of death now is assured. And it was this Barbara lady that's going to make it. And if you look at this covenant, this is a treaty. Where do treaties have to be ratified and initiated? In the Congress. And now he's turned the heads on it because now it should take 2/3 ratification to approve the treaty. Now it takes 1/3 to block it from going into effect. This whole treaty business, we have turned our Constitution on its head, and nobody is fighting this argument at all. It's just, as the passage says, it's a covenant based on lies and distortion and deceit. So, at any rate, but here we sit. It's going down. But one of the things that I noticed is it's not in the news anymore. I don't know when Congress is going to sign and officially sanction this thing. And so it may be a while yet. In fact, there's some arguments for it being just a little while longer, and I'll go over that with you later on today. But before, I wanted to go over the Antichrist, what he does. We know a lot about this guy, really. And what he does, where he comes from, we know his country is Medo-Persia. And in Daniel chapter 9, it says that After 62 weeks shall the Messiah be cut off, but not for himself, and the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with the flood, and unto the end war. Desolations are determined, and he shall confirm the covenant with the many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of his abominations he shall make it desolate, even to the consummation, and that determined shall be poured out upon the desolate. Now, there's another interesting. Now, we already have been over this, but there's something else that's interesting here that I wanted to point out to you. It's like we've come full circle. This is just before. This is Daniel 26. I should have put this in there, and I just stumbled over it this morning. In Daniel 9:24, 70 weeks have been decreed for your people and your holy city to finish the transgression, to make an end of sin, to make atonement for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. And it says, and you are to know and discern that from the issuing of the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. That's 69 weeks. Who was this decree made with? From the decree that went forth to rebuild Jerusalem and the city. Well, you find it in Nehemiah chapter 2. Oops, that's Jeremiah. What happened to Nehemiah? No, here he is. He's hiding. And it came about, this is Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 1. It says, and it came to pass in the month of Nisan, in the 12th year of King Artaxerxes, that wine was before him. Where was Artaxerxes the king? Medo-Persia. This thing has come full circle. We started out with a proclamation that came from Medo-Persia, and here we have another one at the end of the age from Medo-Persia, and it is the covenant with death. So, no extra charge for that. So here we have the covenant with the many, and at the end of this week, or at the midst of this week, he's going to basically commit the abomination that causes desolation.
How long is this week now, in your opinion?
Now the week, how long? Well, the word in the Hebrew is Shabuim, and it means a 7. It can mean 7 days, 7 months, 7 years, 7 anything. You have to go with the context of the where it's mentioned to determine what it means. It means nothing if you try to make it a day. But if you make it a year, a 7-year period, then everything falls out exactly right. Because that covenant that went out to rebuild Jerusalem and the city was by King Artaxerxes in 444 BC. And if you do the math, and instead of using a year as 365.242, if you use a year according to the Jewish measurement of a year, which is 360 days, you come out right on the nose when Jesus was crucified. 69 sets of 7 360-day years. I used to know it. I think it's 173,880 days. And if you add all of that up, change the Hebrew year to a solar year, you'll come up to the month of Nisan, and it comes out the month of Nisan, the 24th day, instead of the 14th. And people have always thought, how can that possibly be? We're off by 10 days. Well, God was close, but it was within 10 days. Well, that's not the story at all. What we don't know is that 7 times every 19 years the Hebrew calendar adds another month. And if you just got through 2 years prior, adding another month, you are 10 days out of skew with the solar calendar. So you have to back up 10 days, and that gets you to Nisan 14, which is exactly the day that Christ was crucified. And if you cut those fractions down, you come up I can get it to between the evens on Nisan 14 when Christ was crucified, according to this. The reason we don't know exactly is because it says it came about in the month of Nisan. Well, that phrase, in the month of Nisan, doesn't mean in the month of Nisan. It means the first day of Nisan, which means sometime after 6 o'clock in the evening. We got a 24-hour period there that we don't know exactly when that covenant was signed. My suspicion is it was around 7:30 in the evening, our time. And that puts everything in. I mean, God is very meticulous. The problem is we are not very meticulous as we try to understand what he's doing. But it is right on the nose. So, here's what this guy's going to do. It says, and in his estate, this is Daniel 11. We're talking about the wars between the kings of the north and the kings of the south. The kings of the north, of course, is the Seleucid portion of Alexander the Great's kingdom. And it says, in his estate, this is one of the kings of the north, shall stand up a vile person to whom they shall not give the honor of the kingdom, but he shall come in peaceably and obtain the kingdom by flatteries. Pretty much what we see with Ali Khomeini. He didn't come in as a warrior. He snuck in and around the end. He did an end run. He made a religious attack on this deal and got himself in good with a small group. This small group is the Republican Guard. And it says, and with the arms of a flood shall they be overflown from before him, and shall be broken, yea, also the prince of the covenant. My suspicion here is what we're talking about is his main antagonist, which is Iraq. It's been broken. There is no Iraq to fight him anymore. And it says, yea, also the prince of the covenant. Coming up, he's going to overflow with his army, headed down south, going after Egypt, but he's going to overflow Jerusalem and the Palestinian area. He's going to own it all. And then, interestingly, after the league is made with him, that's the covenant, he shall work deceitfully. Oh, surprise, surprise. I can't believe that. When did he ever not work deceitfully? It's part of their modus operandi. For he shall come up and shall become strong with the small people. That's the Republican Guard. Because by using them, which is the Iranian version of the Nazi SS, they show up at your place and they say, your business has been confiscated. You need to leave right now and don't take anything with you. And they run people off and steal their businesses. And like I pointed out to you last week, he controls the company now that owns all of these resources that he has stolen, worth some $95 billion. Strong with the small people. And he shall enter peaceably upon the fattest places of the province, which he has done. And he shall do what his fathers have not done, nor his fathers' fathers, and he shall scatter among them the prey, the spoil, the riches, yea, and he shall forecast his devices even against the strongholds for a time. Forecast his devices against strongholds. Man, I mean, you talk about every day, death to America, death to Israel, death to the great Satan. I mean, the guy, he's just like he was designed. And now here's where it gets interesting, because we haven't seen this yet. Who would have thought this was going to happen? And he shall stir up his power and his courage against the king of the south. Who's the king of the south? That's Egypt. With a great army, and the king of the south shall be stirred up to do battle with a very great and mighty army, but he shall not stand, for they shall forecast devices against him. Hey, we're going to have a war between Egypt and Iran, and hey, Egypt's not going to win. Yea, they that feed a portion of his meat shall destroy him. Apparently, whoever the leader is of Egypt is going to be killed by his own people, and his army shall overflow, and many shall fall down dead. So, we can look for this in the news. We're going to see, I don't know how much of it we're going to see, but we're going to be able to see some of this begin to develop, if not in the next year, in the next maybe 2 years. This is what the guy is going to do.
Did you see the quote from, or a statement made by Khomeini about Israel wasn't going to last another 30 years?
You can divide that by 10. And both these kings' hearts, that would be the Egypt and Khmeini, shall be to do mischief, and they shall speak lies at one table. But it shall not prosper, for the end shall be at the time appointed. Now, this time appointed, that's that Hebrew word moed, which has made all of us who study Bible prophecy believe this is going to end on a Jewish holy day. And which holy day would that logically be? Well, if you've heard me ramble on about Yom Kippur, this is it. This is the Day of Atonement. And he says, and then he shall return into his own land with great riches, and his heart shall be against the holy covenant, and he shall do exploits and return to his own land. Run down to Egypt, he's going to come back. He's not going to stay there. And at the time appointed, he will return. Another one of those words, moed. Kind of makes you think that this is going to happen on a Jewish holy day of some kind. Probably Yom Kippur. He will return and come forward to the south, but it shall not be as former or as the latter. We got intervention here. And at the time appointed, there's that moed again, he shall return and come toward the south, and it shall not be as the former or the latter. I think I duplicated that verse twice. Must have special meaning. For ships of Chittim shall come against him, and therefore he shall be grieved and return and have indignation against the holy covenant. So shall he do, so he shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant. So obviously some Jews are going to turn around, and as it always happens, whoever's winning, you're going to get some of the people you're overrunning to jump on your bandwagon. So that's what's going to happen. Now the ships of Chittim, people scratch their heads over that one a lot, but basically what I understand it to mean are ships from the west. So west of what? Well, west of Jerusalem. So that's probably going to be Europe. I got a feeling that we're not in this for some reason. I don't know what the reason is. I don't know. Maybe Yellowstone blew up and inerted the country. I don't know what it is, but it could be just that we just have an administration that, doesn't care about Israel. Who was Ann Coulter? Did you hear what she said? She said, "Why do we care about these blankety-blank Jews?" I was shocked. And then it became obvious to me, she is dating a Muslim. Even though she's a conservative and allegedly a Christian, and, she has no concept of what she's doing. You do not go out and speak against Israel, however bad they are performing. You are poking God in the eye when you do that. I would look for her career to go down like a rock after doing that.
You can be cursed.
What's that?
He's cursed in Israel.
You're poking God in the eye. So I always advise you not to do that. Bless Israel. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Don't ever come against them in any fashion, because you're putting yourself on the line when you do that.
One thought I had was about the flood. We did talk about the flood flood coming over them or something like that. In the verses back there was talk that there's this big dam north of Egypt that was going to.
The Aswan Dam?
Could blow that
Yeah,
up very easily, and
it would come down and wipe out Cairo and everything. Yeah. It may literally be a flood. Typically, that terminology used in the Hebrew means a flood, like a flood of armed forces. Guess it could be a flood of water. I mean, you never know. We'll find out. Maybe. We're here long enough. And then it says, "And arms shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and they shall take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that makes desolate." Well, what is the abomination that makes desolate? Well, fortunately, God gives us rehearsals for these things. And if you will recall, back in 135 BC, in the Maccabean rebellion and the revolt and everything, that thing got kicked off because a guy named Antiochus Epiphanes, a Syrian king, came down and he did the abominable thing. He went into the Holy of Holies, put up a statue of Zeus in the Holy of Holies that had his face on it. And that was the abomination the scripture says, that makes desolate. So we can look for the same thing coming out of this guy. He will probably go into the Holy of Holies, if not himself, a likeness of himself, declare himself to be God. And that is the trumpet sound of the tribulation period. What a way to get it kicked off. And so we, from what we've just discovered from Daniel 11:21 and following down here to Daniel 11:31, these events we have a chance to see. We won't be seeing this one, but we will see wars popping up here between Iran and Egypt if we're here long enough. So that I can say with confidence, because the scripture said so. Chapters that I wanted to go over with you here, because these give us dates, and I'll tell you why. I've always thought that this treaty was going to be signed on a Yom Kippur. It goes back to that passage in Matthew 24 where it said the days would be shortened. My expectation was that we were going to have some sort of interference by some cosmic event causing the earth to go back into its 360 day per year orbit again. May not be the case. Doesn't necessarily have to be. I mean, it's an interesting thought, but doesn't have to be, and maybe it isn't. We'll find out as we go on here. But here's the interesting thing. It says, from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that makes desolate shall be set up, there shall be 1,290 days. What's significant about that? That's 30 days longer than 3.5 years. Now, when does that period end? From what I stand, that moed, from what I believe, is Yom Kippur. And there's sort of a way to verify that. Maybe you've heard me do this before, but if it ends on Yom Kippur, what does this mean? Blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1,305 and 30 days. What is it? Elizabethan English. 1,335 days. Well, that's 45 days longer than 1,290 days. If it ends on Yom Kippur, which I believe that it does, you add 45 days onto Yom Kippur, what do you get? You get Chislev 25. And of course you know what Chislev 25 is. Why, that's Hanukkah. What is Hanukkah? It's a rededication of the temple. And although it does not appear in the Torah, and it does appear in the Mishnah and other places, apparently this is ordained by God because we see Jesus keeping the Feast of Dedication. And he never questioned it. So apparently what happens is the Lord's feet comes and sits down on the Mount of Olives, as we read in Zechariah 14, cleaves in the middle. He goes about cleaning up the place, and apparently miraculously creates the temple on top of it, because it says it's raised up. And then 45 days later, the temple is dedicated. And that fulfills that promise, that 70-week promise, that the last part of it was to what? To anoint the most holy. That would be that last day. That's when the most holy would be anointed. But there's, okay. Now, when you pick this up on YouTube, I don't know what I just did when I backed up. But I didn't have much to say there anyway. So, at any rate, these are two dates that, if the Bible be correct and if our understanding is correct, we got a handle on about when some of these events should be taking place. Now, I want to show you the 10 Jubilees prophecies of Rabbi Judah ben Samuel. And right now, the interesting thing about his prophecy is where it ends. 2017. That would mean on Rosh Hashanah 2017, his his belief was that we're going to see the Messiah on 2017. That's kind of interesting.
Is he living or now?
Oh no, he died in 1217.
Oh.
But he had this interesting prophecy about the Jubilees. And he prophesied that when the Turks take control of Jerusalem, there would be 8 Jubilees. And then he says when the Turks and the Ottoman Empire lost Jerusalem for 50 years, or one Jubilee, that the area around Jerusalem would be a no man's land. And then he said, after that, Israel would control Jerusalem for one Jubilee, and then at the end of that Jubilee would be the return of the Messiah. And so his thinking was that, or at least the guy who made this chart thought, well, that's the beginning of the day of the Lord. Well, not quite. I think it's another year off, but it could be. I don't know. We'll find out. But, and there was another, you know, when Steve was giving us our his rundown of the star signs, remember he had these interesting star signs which occurred on the year 2017, and we never could figure out what he was talking about. Well, I figured out what he was talking about, but I didn't understand where it fit in the big scheme of things, because my expectation was that we would have been out of here on this Rosh Hashanah. So what does 2017 have to do with anything? Well, there's an interesting passage. Naturally, it's a prophecy passage. There would be interesting.
We're so shocked.
Yeah, shock, amazement. That's over here in Revelation 16. And, whoa, wait a minute. I lied. What happened? Oh, how about 12? Revelations 12. And this was that interesting sign which occurred. Now, Steve takes issue with it occurring at 3 BC, but for my money, it occurred. And this is what it was. Revelation 12:1. And a great sign appeared in heaven, and a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and on her head was a crown of 12 stars. That's the sign of Virgo, by the way. And she was with child and cried out, being in labor and pain to give birth. And another sign appeared in heaven, and behold, a red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his heads were 7 diadems. That's this final culmination of the Antichrist system. And with his tail he swept away 1/3 of the stars of heaven. What do you know about this demon? Well, we know that 1/3 of the angelic host was cast down to earth because they followed Satan. And it says, and he threw them to the earth, and the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she gave birth he might devour her child. And she gave birth to a son, a male child, who was to rule the nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to God and to his throne. And the woman fled to the wilderness, where she had a place prepared by God, so that she might be nourished for 1,260 days. That is 3.5 years. Now, the interesting part about this is, in 3 BC, this star arrangement occurred on Rosh Hashanah. We had between 6:30 and 7:15 on the evening of Rosh Hashanah, 3 BC, the sign of Virgo was in full body, well, the sun fully clothed that constellation, and moving right under her feet, directly under her feet for 45 minutes was the moon. And over her head were 12 stars. That hits the point of Rosh Hashanah. That's why, among other reasons, why we believe that the Lord came into this world on Rosh Hashanah. Remember, Bereshit, Elohim, bara, Hashamayim, ha'eretz. The word Bereshit, rearranged, Aleph Batishri. Jews believe the world was created on Aleph Batishri, which is Rosh Hashanah. On the 6th day, on Aleph Batishri, the atom was created. 4,000 years later, on Aleph Tishri, the second Adam was created. You get the feeling we're into well, looks like a propagation to me. So when would we look for the Messiah to return again? Well, how about Aleph Tishri on some future date? Probably 2,000 years later, if you're keeping track of time according to the Jews. Well, that interesting star arrangement occurs again, Rosh Hashanah 2017. Now, why is that of interest? Well, I was reading this passage, and I happened to be puzzled by some words here. It said, and her child was caught up to God, to his throne. How was it that Jesus left this earth? He was on the Mount of Olives, wasn't he? And he was standing there and he was caught up to God, right? Well, not really. The words there says he was received up to heaven. The word harpuzo was not used there. What do we know about this word harpazo? Well, harpazo is the word used for the church in 1 Thessalonians. The church was caught up. It wasn't received up into heaven gently on a cloud. It was by force removed. This puzzles me here. Why did they use a different terminology? Is it possible that this man-child that was about to be destroyed is a symbol of the church some way? Looks like it's a stretch to me, but the fact that they use that word harpazo there, which in the what is it? Latin. In the Latin Vulgate, the word is raptire, rapio, which we get our word rapture from. Why did they use that word there instead of the same words they used over in Acts chapter 1? This gently receiving up to heaven business as opposed to a rapid catching away. Don't know. But I just thought it was worth pointing out because it's different. It's different. And now that we know, church can't go through tribulation. I'm absolutely sure of that. And if the tribulation starts 3.5 years after this signature on this nuclear treaty, sometime between now and the next 3 years, we got to be out of here. I mean, so you want a candidate for the next getting out of here? I would say 2017 might be the best candidate right now. I'm almost sure, and I don't have any reason to say that other than it just seems to be typical the way God works. He gives us signs before he executes anything. Like Amos 3:7 says, surely the Lord will do nothing, but he revealed his hidden secrets to his servants, the prophets. And then the admonition to Jerusalem. You know the signs of the weather. Why don't you know the signs of the times? The implication was, hey, they're right there. Why don't you look at them and find them? You know what's going on. Yes.
The constellation will occur on Rosh Hashanah in 2017.
Yeah, it's a particular
And
time.
that's 12 stars
There will be
of the constellation
of Virgo.
And the stars mean actual stars, not planets. And,
These are stars, yes.
Okay, and then the sun will be
Full body.
full body, meaning it'll be
And when the sun is full bodied and the moon is under the feet, that is by definition a new moon.
now wait, full body, on her body.
On the body of the constellation. It's in the background.
Okay. And
The
then-
constellation Virgo is in the background. The sun is between us and Virgo. And walking underneath, just wafting underneath the feet of Virgo is the new moon. It would have to be a new moon because the sun is right behind the moon at that point. See? So that that's going to be a new moon day. It just so happens it's Rosh Hashanah because that's when Virgo finds itself directly behind the sun. So this is an astronomical point in time.
Is it a new moon because it's Rosh Hashanah, or does it happen to be Rosh Hashanah because it's a new moon?
It can't be Rosh Hashanah unless it's a new
They
moon.
have to see
It
that
has-
that it's a new moon
Yeah.
before it's Rosh Hashanah.
That's right. Got to have 2 or 3 witnesses, which we've just learned.
And no dust storm.
Yeah, and I bet no Muslims are allowed.
Didn't I see something or hear something, I think I was reading it to you last week and you may have had it up there a minute ago, my brain was in a fog this morning.
Yours is in a fog.
Yeah.
You should have tried driving a car home faster than humanly possible
Yeah, we
at
don't want to talk about that.
midnight last night from Houston. I don't even remember the trip, which is kind of scary. I was driving the car. It was a religious experience. We all felt closer to God. Just any minute we might be there. Yeah.
There's the Comet Kahootek.
Huh?
They do the Comet Kahootek.
Oh, yeah.
I've got a Kahootek story to tell you on this thing. Not right now.
Oh, okay.
What about this 2033? That's what I was gonna.
Oh, yeah, there's going to be another blood moon on 2033. And so people said 2033, Jesus crucified 33 AD. So now you got your exact 2,000 years. So that must be when Jesus is coming back. Well, it's an interesting thought. There are no star signs that precede that I'm aware of. So I'd say you're overshooting. But there is a passage that implies that. Let me...
I'll be my 80s then. And I already heard all. So.
Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Malachi. Oh, where is that? Is it Hosea? Hosea, chapter 6. Come, let us return to the Lord, for he hath torn us and he will heal us. He has wounded us and he will bandage us. He will revive us after 2 days and raise us up on the third day, that we may live before him. So let us know and press on to know the Lord, for his going forth is as certain as the dawn. He will come to us like the rain. Literally, the former rain and the latter rain to the earth. What do we know about the holy days? Former rains, latter rains. The latter rains he came the first time, former rains he's coming back for. The interesting point is, 2 days. He's going to come back in 2 days. He left us, and if you read the previous verse, it says, even I will carry away, and there will be none to deliver. I will go away and return to my place, until they acknowledge their guilt and seek my face, and in their affliction they will seek me earnestly. Then it says, in 2 days, he'll come back. He left? Okay, 2 days, 2,000 years, 2033, right? Here's the problem. The problem is, the years are not 365.242 years. They're always 360. So it's 2,000 years, because a day in the eyes of the Lord is 1,000 years, according to the Old Testament. So if you got 2,000 years, when does that occur? You got to multiply them by 360 years, and guess what? It says after 2 days. We are after 2 days now. After 2,000 years of 360 years. So that passage, which some have used to point to 2033, in my humble opinion, doesn't hold any water. There are no star signs. There is, we have this sign of the Antichrist because we know who he is. I don't know very much, but I mean, within one part out of 100 billion, we know who he is. And he's about to sign this treaty. The interesting thing now is, because it wasn't signed on Yom Kippur, to me that says, no more 360-day year business. Now we have to use days. And that's one of the reasons, I suspect, that the prophecies always talk about days. It says, it's 3.5 years, but it's 1,260 days, and it's 42 months. And so it's like he's repeating this over and over again so that we would know. Yeah.
How old is Khomeini?
Say again?
How old is Khomeini?
I don't know. Pretty old.
Okay, but this happened to him in 1981. I'm
Mhm.
using the age of day. Okay, so it's not 81, it happened in 1981.
It happened in 81, but he's pretty old. I don't know if he's 80 yet, but he's pretty close. So, any questions?
What else did Steve say last week? Are you recapping some of that?
Yeah, that's some interesting stuff, because we were trying to figure out possible scenarios that work. You know, one of the really the neatest scenario of all this was 7 years of tribulation, the church leaves before the tribulation, 7 years in the hoopah. And everybody thought, hey, 7 years in the hoopah, that pretty much correlation, 7 and 7. The only problem is now we know there ain't 7 years. How does that work? It's entirely possible that the 7 days in the hoopah are exactly 7 days in the hoopah. Between Rosh Hashanah 2022 and Yom Kippur, 7 days, could be the 7 days in the hoopah, because if you read the Revelation account very carefully, that's when the Messiah is crowned king and he makes the call for the wedding feast. So it could be just 7 days. But like I say, if we...
Well, that shoots your theory of 7 days being 7,000, I mean, a day is 1,000 years.
No, that's just a day means a day. Where were you last night at midnight?
I'm tired.
So a day means a day unless it means 1,000 years?
Well, when we're talking about time, at least in this passage in Hosea, it doesn't make any sense unless a day is 1,000 years in the eyes of the Lord. And then it makes sense. It does. Seems to. Yeah, Phil?
Well, think about meaning by him and how much faith he put in him being the Antichrist. And then I was reading in Isaiah 11:12 when it talks about the regathering of Israel.
Mhm.
They use the word in there, Syria. And I'm wondering if the Antichrist is really coming from Syria.
Assyria.
So we may be focusing on the wrong,
Assyria.
Assyria.
If
I
you
realize
look,
that
go look at an ancient map of Assyria. It covers
too much
Persia. And so I'm pretty confident with this guy Khamenei being the Antichrist. The only issue that I see there that's up for grabs is this business about him being blind. And the blind word in the Hebrew, like I said, can also mean dimmed vision by virtue of age. And this guy is old. And if there was ever...
76 is not...
Thank you, man.
I'm getting closer.
Well, does anybody want to argue that point? When do you get old? I'm old and I'm 68.
Here's old.
Oh, decrepit. That's decrepit. That's not old.
So could dim be just bad eyesight from age? Being
Yes.
Older, just not being able to see clearly?
Yeah.
Not necessarily
blind. The word is repeated twice in the Hebrew, and they interpret it as ultimately blind. But what it means is, and can mean, there's more than one, these Hebrew words are tricky because they can mean more than one thing. But one of the meanings is blind or dimmed vision by virtue of age.
Do people get macro degeneration in both eyes and stuff? Just because you have one eye?
Yeah, it's entirely possible. I would guess you could get it. And one of the things I think is when he had that explosion, I think it may have hammered his optic nerve. It's bound to have, because if it was powerful enough to ruin his arm and kill him literally before he came back to life, it looks like there could have been some damage.
Seem to be pretty normal, but
Yeah, I've tried the very few pictures that I've seen of the guy. I've tried to home in on his right eye. I can't see anything in there that looks, odd or weird or like his eye was ruined or anything. So like I said, within that parameter, it sure looks like that this is the guy. Now, let's watch this covenant signature. It's kind of gone below the press. They're not following this anymore. It's like it's a done deal. But there's been no formal ceremony to sign this thing. And Obama's going to want to get all the credit for that he possibly can. It's got to be a big deal. And I haven't seen anything happen. The day to look for is November the 11th, it looks like. But we'll see. This is just a possibility. Any questions?
I have a question. I was reviewing the tetrads, and the last two, I believe, were in 48 and 67. Is that correct? And so that was 48 was when Israel was recognized. Was it by the United Nations?
Well, actually,
And
what
67,
happened?
They got their borders back.
They declared their independence in 48. Their government never really took hold until 49, and it was 49 and 50 that the tetrads occurred.
Okay.
And 67 and 68 was the next one, and that's when they had the Yom Kippur War. So dramatic things happen to Israel during a tetrad or in that immediate vicinity. And we're just fixing to fix, was it tonight? We're going to have the last of the blood moons. I would watch the news tomorrow and see if anything interesting happens in Israel. You know, they're having the Alaska Mosque riots right now over there. Not much covered in the news, but who knows what could foment out of all of this. And it could be that this darn peace treaty is the deal. That because, you know, this is literally death to Israel if this is allowed to go through. I mean, can you imagine making an agreement with your neighbor who has sworn to kill you and all of your family, making an agreement with him to say, okay, can we negotiate this? Well, here, let me loan you $1,000 to go buy the shotgun that you're going to shoot my family with. I mean, what kind of a negotiation? I mean, Donald Trump is a little wacky, but he hits that one right on the nose and says, man, who negotiated this thing? The only way you could get by with negotiating something like this is if you had some inside help. Somebody on the inside of our government really wants this thing to go, and in the form that it is in, which is basically giving Iran a nuclear bomb. Not just one, a bunch. And then the stupidity of it all. Who's going to inspect them? The Iranians are going to self-inspect.
They've
You
already,
can trust
they've
us.
already reported on one of their self-inspections.
Yes.
What I heard.
Yeah.
Everything apparently is okay.
Yeah, it's no, surprise.
Surprise.
Yeah,
What you find is all of it actually makes sense if you assume they already have the bomb.
I bet you they got a bunch of
So
them.
if they already have the bomb, then all the stuff you see, the agreement makes sense. You said you just want to hide it and don't tell everybody they have the bomb.
I bet you they do.
Blows up.
I bet you they got one.